Right, so got into a place now where the offside is in the same position as this side, except for the drive shaft. I'll show you why that is in a minute. Ball joint on the other side came off much easier. It still needed the tool, but it didn't cause me to have an aneurysm when it actually went off, which was good. Track rod end is equally as knackered that side as this side. Ball joint on that side isn't quite as bad as this one. This one is really bad. It's not quite Betty bad, but it's halfway there. And that was only MOT'd in, I mean, I say only MOT'd in January. We know how many miles Ian has realistically done in this car. It's not a huge amount. So I can only imagine they had it on high when they did it. You put it on high suspension and you won't get any decent readings. So yeah, the drive shaft is disconnected on this far side. It won't just pull out. It won't just withdraw. And there's a reason for that. And I shall show you that reason now. Because I'm kind. So, up in here, wait, there's my light gone. Am I any better? Not really. Just about. So this is the drive shaft. And this is the drive shaft. It passes through the engine mount. This isn't unique to the C5. All the BXs, 205s, 405s, anything with an XU or EW engine does this. They pass through this housing and there's a bearing on that shaft. So there's a bolt here, another one at the top. If it's anything like a BX, that will be an 11mm M7 thread. Certainly looks it. And you undo that, and this bolt has a hook on the end on the other side, which is pulling the bearing into the housing. So you undo those two bolts, it lets go of the bearing. You should just be able to pull the shaft straight out. Sometimes they get seized in there, and then you have a bad day. But that's not going to happen, is it? Because we're going to be positive. So yeah, other than that, we're still dripping LDS. Obviously. Drive shaft unhooked from the hub. Say this. That's not as bad. I mean, it probably could be left. I suspect he'll ask me to do it because it's already in bits, kind of. But yeah, for the most part, you see we've got a lot more room around that gearbox now. It could live in the front of there. Look, the space is tighter along the back. It must be said, but I think it's doable. I certainly don't think the subframe needs to be removed to do it. It may need to be dropped very slightly, but I really don't want to do that. I don't think it will. Looking at it, looks like it should come out without it. So yeah, drive shaft out, and then apart from the engine mount at the top, and there's a special tool I have to employ before I remove that, which I shall show you in a bit. Yeah, apart from that, I reckon we're good to go. First ever ratchet spanner I ever bought was an 11mm for precisely this job. There. And there is the spanner. I still have it. And it still fits, because spanners don't shrink. The only problem you've got is when you the bolt, because it's a hook at the end, it's in a sort of a recess, and the hook can move quite a bit, so the bolt's actually got a few degrees of free play either way, which is quite annoying. So you have to sort of hold it in place while you do the ratchet bit, otherwise you get about, well, 8 mini clicks, something like that, whereas if you hold it you get all that. Well, the drive shaft just moved quite happily, so that's a good sign. I think it might. Oh, I've got no access here at all. You know, actually I can get a ratchet in there. There's me using my spanner that I bought specially for the occasion, without realising you're not working on a BX anymore, you've got space there, he says, but you can't find his ratchet anywhere. Oh dear. Tell you what, I am cream crackered. Not even been in it that long. Alloy sump, alloy subframe, alloy sump, alloy subframe. Stop it. Oh, that's good. You get to a point where you can push the bolt through and turn it 180 degrees and it will let go of the drive shaft. Normally that's right on the end of the thread. But on a C5 it appears not. It appears they've made the bolt slightly longer to address the problem. Let's see if I've got any... Oh dear, no, I've got no room at all. Excellent. Looks like it's the trusty old spanner again. No wiggle room at all there. Come on. Oh dear. Oh, you've got no access to that. Oh, I don't really want to get the flexies involved because I don't really like those. They don't really work very well, but... Oh dear, come on. Oh, come on. Come on. That's got to be enough. Yeah. Now, in theory, the drive shaft should simply pull out. But it won't. If it does, Cecily is a person. No, it won't, see? They never do. Well, they do sometimes. Generally, if they've been in and out 500 times. A little persuasion never hurt. There you go. Do not fall. So you basically withdraw it through that bearing mount. There you go. So of course there are different lengths. That's the driver's side one. Look, big. Yeah, different lengths because the gearbox is on the side of the engine. So the drive shaft, one of the drive shafts has to go a further distance than the other. I could get to his actuator. Should we give him some more boost? No, that would be reassess things. I know I've got the engine, the gearbox mount rather to do. But what else? Anything else? Taking out a bolt there. There's no bolt in there. I've only got a couple of bolts holding it in at the top. I think I might put one of those back in actually. I think I might put that bolt there back in. Because the problem you've got is when you start to take the gearbox bolts off, the engine and box, because they're heavy, naturally try and split at the bottom and try and fall out this way. So you find you get a bigger gap at the bottom than at the top. Well, that's not good because it's stressing it out. So what I'm probably going to do is pop a bolt back in here, because this one's easily accessible. Maybe that one as well. And that will keep it together. Even if I could take all the upper ones out then, it'll keep it together. As long as it's bolted in up there, it'll keep it together. So that's probably what I'll do. There is a bolt somewhere. Oh, look, here's one I made earlier. Oh, that's not the right one. Does that one go there? Right. So I could now remove all the bolts in the top of the gearbox. It'll be fine. It would only not be fine if I was trying to lift the engine from underneath instead. But I'm not going to do that because that wouldn't help. So it's going to have that bolt and that bolt are going to keep it all together while I'm prattling around. So now what I need to do, get it back down and use my special tool that will help me remove the gearbox mount. And here is my special tool. No. This. It's a big beam. It can hold 300 kilograms. Which is nearly as much as the gearbox on this car. So, yeah, what I need to do now, drop her down. Set up my tool, and basically what that beam will do is sit between the inner wings of the car, assuming they're strong enough, and it'll hold the engine at the top in one of the eyelets, so that when I take the gearbox mount off, it stops the engine falling out. Because that's the thing, you've got most front wheel drive cars, you've got three main mounts. You've got one on that side, one on that side, they both hold it up. And on this car, you've got one down here, which stops it rocking backwards and forwards. That one doesn't support the weight of it. It just stops it going back and forth. Sometimes they have those mounts on the front. Sometimes they have more of them, and there's one up there. It depends on the car, but 9 times out of 10, the mount that's on the gearbox is going to be one of the main hanging mounts. And if you take off a hanging mount, it all falls. So we don't want that. Now, is it going to play ball? On the face of it, no. There is an eyelet on the engine and it's in a perfect place. But in order to use the eyelet, I've got to disconnect the bonnet gas struts. And if I do that, well, the bonnet will come down. So, but I don't think I have a choice. So unless I can find a way of... I can't really lift the bonnet up anymore, because if I lift it up anymore, when it goes up in the air, because the car is so big, the bonnet would hit the rafter and the roof. Right, so I've got my special tool positioned. I'm looking at the sides of the inner wings here, and I'm thinking they don't look as strong as cars used to. So I'm guessing it's okay to put them there. Find out. I've had to come up with this ingenious bonnet stay device, which is, I don't really like it, to be honest, but it's I wonder if I might use a cable tie just to anchor that slightly, just because I don't want it falling on my head. I know it's an aluminium bonnet, but it would probably still hurt. There you go. Right, so that's on there. The idea is that will take the weight of the gearbox. So what I shall do in the meantime is find my 16mm socket. Tell you what, it's starting to get hot in here. I'd open the door, but there are people out there. And also it makes the sound go funny. It makes it even worse than it already is. Where's my 16mm socket gone? I'm assuming I didn't put it back. No, that's a 16mm. Oh, it's on there. Oh, donkey. Right. Am I going to need... I think I am going to need that. So I'm going to take the 2 upper gearbox bolts out. The 2 retaining bolts. Because in theory, I don't need them anymore. But of course, they're quite tight. Oh. I'm not expecting to get the new clutch fitted and have it all back together again today. Let's try. That's not going to happen. But I would quite like to get the gearbox off and have the old clutch off and have everything kind of in a state ready to think about putting it back together. So that was 1, 2, 3. That's it. Okay. I can see the actual gearbox mount, the rubber bit, is buried under here. But what I'm hoping is that I can just undo the bolts. It's a bit involved to get to that. I'm hoping I can just undo the bolts on the top. I'm not convinced that's going to work. The problem is, when you go to put the gearbox back in, you've got all sorts of shimmying around and jiggery pokery, trying to get the splines lined up, and you've got to move it around. You've got a freedom to move it. That's why I've moved so much stuff out of the way of it. But if you're trying to do all that and align 3 holes in a triangular fashion with these 3 bolts, although one of them's a stud and it does have a male type arrangement on the top of it, so it's possible I could remove that stud from the gearbox. Oh, knuckles. Thing is, the gearbox may be starting to drop as I undo this, so I have to be careful. I mean, if I have to take all this out, I'll take it all out, but I'm just trying to avoid that. Much electronics goes on in that. It's starting to lift. Ooh, God. Ah! My wood. God. That don't want to come out, does it? You ready yet? Fight that was. So, I think it is now starting to... Yeah, it's now swinging on one nut there, so... What was that? Well, I've got a free cable tie. Oh no, I think we got it. Yes. The nut's off. So in theory... Hey, good girl. Right, there we go. Now if I do this, the gearbox, if I lower this down gently. So I've removed the bolts at the top. It's just the ones at the bottom, that's it, isn't it? We're there. Now, do you do it from the top or do you do it from the bottom? If you've got everything off, in theory, it's easier from the bottom if you have a transmission jack, which thankfully I do. From the top, not easy. Bit of a backbreaker, but if you've got any problems, you can sort them there and then. But I'm going to be brave and just go up from, put the car up and do it from underneath. The only downside with this is I can't adjust the height of that once the car's up in the air. I shouldn't need to, he said. I can always use a step ladder if the worst comes to worst. So how are we doing on space? Oh yeah, no, we've probably got enough. Right. Ow! Oh, transmission jack is heavy. Who knew? Right. This is a transmission jack. It's a claw. You pump it with your feet, it lifts up. Oh, this really is the moment of truth. The thing I don't like is that these pipes are sat right underneath that heavy gearbox. I may just try moving that quickly because having looked at it again, I think it might be possible to move them. Guarantee you the tool I'm looking for, my 3/8 drive ratchet, is up there somewhere. Oh. Oh, yes. Yes, 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 there is. Oh no, it's leaking LDS everywhere again. Right, okay, so that's good. That's made life somewhat easier. Now I'm not going to put that bolt back in there because that will get in the way of, ow, that will get in the way of the gearbox. Whoa, right, yeah, okay, so it is basically the two bolts I put in to hold it in place and she starts to come off. That's about the size of it. Hate this bit. There's going to be a lot of swearing. Editing takes a very long time, and I think it is fair to edit out proper swearing. Not necessarily the odd words, but I don't know who's watching, and I know back in the days when my kids were innocent and they didn't swear all the bloody time, I would have hated them to watch something on YouTube that had bad language, but this could be quite a stressful exercise. Well, it's nothing compared to putting it back on. That'll be way worse. Proper one of these has got chains around it, so you can. Oh, it says. So you can chain it to Gearbox. But this one doesn't. This one's awful as well. It's a cheap one, but oh my god, it barely lasted any time at all. It will slowly sink now. If you want it to stay up, you have to put a set of mole grips on the piston. Problem is, all the weight is kind of in that bit, but the claws of this don't really sit in there because the subframe's in the way. Mind you, I can support that bit. Where I find I've got a bolt of some sort left. Oh, I have. I've literally got a big, fat, blatant bolt. Come on, Cecily, this will be your last bit for the disassembly. Well, no, there will be other bits I have to disassemble, but for this job, you've done so well now. Don't have your gearbox get stuck and then fall on the floor. It's a long way down, and it will probably be the end of you. And I get the feeling you're a car that wants to live. So the gearbox is now starting to move from the engine. Yep. The one is about to become two. Bolt in there a couple of threads just in case my less than ideal weight distribution becomes a problem. Right. Come on. Oh, you bugger. The gearbox mount is in the way. Kind of. I think it'd be alright. Do not fall off this. It will be a bad idea. Bloody gear cables. Come on. Something is snagging somewhere. Diff's not touching. It's like that horrible feeling when you realise there's still something connected up there. It can't be because it's got that far off. Release arm is free. Note to self, buy a new transmission jack. And not one of these. Honestly, the seal in this one, it failed so quickly. And you can't drop it down one-handed. You have to turn the thing and push it down at the same time, yeah. But when you do put a gearbox under it, it will fall by itself. So it's the opposite of what you want. Oh God, putting this back on. It's going to be horrible. It's not even taking the weight. Every time you just put the weight on it, it just drops again. Come on. Where's this water coming from? It's genuinely not catching anywhere. Well, I mean, it's touching here, but that's fine. So the camera ran out of battery, but that was quite a long time ago. This is the gearbox. It is here. It is off the engine. took me quite a long time to do that. It turns out, yes, you do need to remove this. If you don't, the gearbox will get jammed against it while the car is up in the air after you've elected to take the gearbox out from the bottom, not the top. And you will need a ladder, step ladder like this, up which you will need to climb to reach said mount to remove it, with bolts that are reluctant. And then while up said ladder will fall over and you will end up going to A&E. No, that bit didn't really happen. But I did have to climb the ladder to remove this, to get enough space to get that out. That is a pig, but it's out. It is out. And it's actually all looking all right in there, so that's good news. There's no real wear on the nose. The release bearing slides up and down. I'll look at all this at a later date when I'm cleaning it. The flywheel, I shall take you to it, if you can even see it. Let's see if I can improve the light situation here slightly. Here we go. So you can just about see, I think. Yes, well you can see the flywheel. You don't need to see me. So yeah, this is a dual mass flywheel, which is why it's a good deal chunkier than a regular one. I don't know how much play is normal in a dual mass flywheel. It's not something I've... Oh, that's a horrible noise. It's not something I've ever had to get involved with before, because TVRs don't have dual mesh flywheels, amazingly. But there is a fair bit of play in that. So that's like the outer bit and the inner bit. Now, it might not be, it might be that that's normal, I don't know. It could be because obviously there's a fair bit of, would that be centripetal force? Or centrifugal force? Whatever. There's force. And it might be that when the engine's spinning, that amount of play is inconsequential and it just, you know, it's just going the same direction. But it does seem quite a lot. But it is immaterial because it's all coming off and going in the bin anyway, so zoom in. No, that's zoom out. Oh, scary. Yeah, so that's fine. There's the starter motor, which originally, when the gearbox was in place, would have mounted around there somewhere, and you can see how that would drive the it would drive the flywheel when triggered. So this is the release bearing, and that is not happy. That's rough as a badger's arse, that is. So that's probably a good thing that's being changed. Now, I'm not going to do an unboxing session now, because I'm still getting dripped on with LDS. Amazing. The gearbox, the replacement gearbox for this car, that's not gearbox, clutch. Let's move this. This is going to get walked into. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, the replacement flywheel we've got and replacement clutch, fantastically, are in the boot of the car that has no battery and is up in the air, and you can't get to the back because it's too long and it's up against all the junk I've got at the back there. So it's all going well. So I shall be climbing in through the car to get to that. But yeah, on the whole, not too bad at all. It could have been much worse. I think there's a few bits it might be worth changing while we're there. But it's all out, it's fine. Yeah, I can take off the flywheel, I can take off the clutch, I can have a look at the new unit, the single mass conversion, to compare it, make sure it fits. I'm imagining it does. People, no, I actually haven't addressed the reason why you would go for a single mass conversion. Basically, so that you don't have any issues. Because I mean, that one's, if this is the original one, what is it? LUK could have been original actually. LUK. You wouldn't think so. You'd think original one Citroën would be a Valio or something like that. But I've got a feeling HD always were LUK. If that's not original, that is knackered. But yeah, I think that's original and just worn out. So yeah, reason for going for the single mass, a solid flywheel, is just, yeah, it's just longevity really. It's one less thing to have to worry about. And when the clutch does eventually wear out in the future, you just change the clutch. It costs you 80 quid, not 300 or whatever this was. So yeah, right, I'm going home.